The lush, verdant hills of Manipur, a state in northeast India, are home to a diverse tapestry of ethnic groups. Among them are the Kuki people, a tribal community with deep roots in this region. Recent times have seen their peaceful existence shattered by ethnic violence, leaving destruction and displacement. Many have fled their villages, seeking refuge in makeshift camps. At the heart of the crisis lies the Kuki community's struggle for self-determination. They seek greater autonomy, feeling marginalized within the existing political framework. The situation underscores the need for dialogue and reconciliation. As they rebuild, the question remains, can they find peace within the current framework, or does their future lie in greater autonomy? The roots of the current crisis in Manipur run deep, entangled in a complex web of historical grievances, perceived injustices, and a struggle for recognition and rights. The Kuki people for generations have maintained that their voices have been drowned out, their concerns ignored, and their aspirations sidelined within the larger political landscape of Manipur. Central to their grievances is a sense of historical marginalization. The Kuki community points to a long history of being denied equal access to education, healthcare, and economic opportunities. They argue that development initiatives have often bypassed their communities, leaving them lagging behind in terms of infrastructure and basic amenities. This sense of being left behind has fueled resentment and a belief that their interests are not adequately represented within the existing power structures. Adding fuel to the fire is a perception of being treated as second-class citizens in their own land. The Kuki community alleges discrimination in government jobs, land ownership, and access to justice. They point to instances of violence and intimidation directed at their community, often with impunity. This sense of vulnerability and lack of protection from the state has further deepened their mistrust and alienation. The historical grievances of the Kuki people are not merely abstract concepts confined to the annals of the past. They are lived experiences passed down through generations, shaping their worldview and fueling their aspirations for a future where their voices are heard, their rights respected, and their identity preserved. The current crisis is a stark reminder that unaddressed grievances have a way of resurfacing, often with greater intensity, threatening to unravel the fragile fabric of society. The recent violence in Manipur has brought to the forefront the long-standing demand of the Kuki people for greater autonomy. Feeling marginalized and unheard within the existing political framework, they are increasingly looking towards self-governance as the only viable solution to their grievances. This desire for self-determination stems from a deep-seated belief that their interests can only be safeguarded if they have greater control over their own affairs. The Indigenous Tribal Leaders Forum, a representative body of the Kuki community, has emerged as a leading voice in their quest for self-rule. The ITLF argues that years of living under a system that has consistently failed to address their concerns has left them with no choice but to seek greater autonomy. They envision a future where they have the power to shape their own destiny, free from what they perceive as the discriminatory policies of the state government. The ITLF's call for self-rule is not a demand for secession from India, rather it is a plea for greater devolution of power within the framework of the Indian constitution. They seek a system where they have greater control over matters that directly impact their lives, such as land, resources, culture, and local governance. This, they believe, is the only way to ensure their safety, protect their identity, and achieve their full potential. The demand for self-rule, however, is not without its challenges. It is a complex issue, fraught with political sensitivities and potential legal hurdles. The Manipur government has rejected the ITLF's demand, asserting the territorial integrity of the state. Other communities in Manipur have also expressed reservations, fearing that granting autonomy to one group could trigger similar demands from others, potentially leading to further divisions and instability. Section 4. The border fence controversy. Adding another layer of complexity to the already volatile situation in Manipur is the Indian government's decision to construct a fence along the Indo-Myanmar border. While touted as a measure to curb insurgency and illegal immigration, the border fence has become a point of contention, particularly for the Kuki community, whose lives and identities are intricately intertwined with the porous border they have traversed for generations. For the Kuki people, the border fence represents more than just a physical barrier. It symbolizes a severance of deep-rooted cultural and familial ties that extend across the border. The Kuki community living in Manipur shares strong ethnic and kinship bonds with communities residing in Myanmar. The free movement regime, which allowed for visa-free travel within a 16-kilometer radius of the border, facilitated close social, cultural and economic exchanges between these communities. The border fence, they argue, will not only restrict their movement and disrupt their traditional way of life, but also undermine their sense of identity and belonging. They fear that the fence will divide families, restrict access to ancestral lands, and erode their cultural practices, which have been preserved for generations through cross-border interactions. The Kuki community maintains that the border fence is a simplistic solution to a complex problem. They argue that it fails to address the root causes of insurgency and illegal immigration, which lie in the lack of development, economic opportunities, and political representation in border areas. Instead of resorting to physical barriers, they advocate for a more nuanced approach that prioritizes dialogue, development, and respect for the rights and aspirations of border communities. Section 5. A community divided. The ongoing crisis in Manipur has laid bare the deep-seated divisions that exist within the state's social fabric. The violence, while primarily directed at the Kuki community, has also resulted in retaliatory attacks, further deepening the mistrust and animosity between different ethnic groups. This cycle of violence and counter-violence threatens to push Manipur further down a path of instability and conflict. The violence has resulted in a tragic loss of life, widespread displacement, and a climate of fear and suspicion that permeates everyday life. Communities that once lived in relative harmony now view each other with suspicion, their interactions tainted by the memory of violence and the fear of further unrest. This breakdown of trust poses a significant challenge to any attempts at reconciliation and peace building. The current situation underscores the urgent need for dialogue and reconciliation. Addressing the root causes of the conflict, including historical grievances, perceived injustices, and the struggle for identity and recognition, is crucial for fostering lasting peace. This requires a concerted effort from all stakeholders, including the government, community leaders, and civil society organizations. Healing the wounds of the past and building a more inclusive and equitable society will require empathy, understanding, and a willingness to engage in difficult conversations. It demands a commitment to justice, accountability, and a recognition of the shared humanity that binds all communities in Manipur, irrespective of their ethnic or religious differences.